Now, I had met Mr. Right yet, right? Okay. But I told y'all how we met, and I know he the one, right? So, I was ducking down, and the third time when I came back up, he let the keys go. My whole face was swollen. And I was just like, what? I didn't know how to take that because I was just like, it's not that serious. You know what it is. It's nothing but a hookup. And I don't have to hook up with you if you can't do right. Right? You know? So, that's the first thing he did. And I continued to see him because the money was good. You know? And he knew what it was. I knew what it was. But he had money and I wanted it. So I'm like, we were somewhere in a hotel. And I want to say that we was not in this hometown that I stayed in because we was at a hotel. We had went out of town, and I think this was my first time spending a night with him outside of the house that he threw the keys in my face. So I forgave him that because I really know how to take that. That was the first time it happened to me, and I was really young. And he was like, "Oh, I'm sorry," and all this. So I'm like, okay, I can forgive him because the money was good, right? So we're at this hotel and everything is going good. And we chilling in this hotel and he comes over, he sit right next to me and he's talking. It's a normal conversation. Next thing I know, I wore clogs at this time. We're having a conversation and I'm sitting there, I'm watching TV, but I'm not really paying attention to him, right? And we talking and I'm like, whatever. So he pick up my shoe and he starts to repeatedly beat me on my leg with my shoe. He was really trying to break his sister down. I knew my mom and daddy was straight up fighters. They fought each other. But this dude was bigger than me because I only weighed like 100 or some pounds at the time. I weigh 2 something now, but back then I was just 1 something. So I'm like, I didn't know how to take that. But I was like, what the hell? And then I went to the friend that hooked us up, and I'm like, why didn't you tell me this dude was like this? She said, I did. And I was like, okay. And then it was like, he'll jump on a woman, but he won't jump on a man. I was like, all right. So we come back from out of town, and I find out he's a woman beater. And I'm like, okay, that's it. Right? I'm like, I'm never leaving home because I have to have somebody with me. So he ended up talking me into getting this apartment. He paid for everything. I'm like, okay. I move in and he pays for everything and I'm there. And he and I were laying in the floor one time. This is when I found out that he wouldn't fight a man. And I started to learn him. And we was drinking and then he turned on me. And I thought that he was going to turn violent like he did in the hotel. So I picked up the Remy Martin bottle and I hit him in his chest as hard as I could and knocked the wind from him. And he was like, you tried to kill me. And I said, well, don't play with me. I wasn't even trying to do nothing. We were just chilling, which I don't know if he was lying or what. So that happened and I still stayed in this apartment. And then one day he came over and we was having a regular conversation. And I think I had asked for some money or something. Or he would just stop by at this time because he was paying for everything. He had a key and he could just come in. So it wasn't like I could hide anything. But I wasn't a cheater. I only messed with one person at a time. So we're in the apartment and we're talking. And I look up and he is pointing a 9mm at me. And this is the first time this has ever happened to me. And I'm young. I'm, 18? I'm looking at him like, what the? I don't know this sucker from Adam, right? I'm like, because they say he was a woman beater. They say he would pull guns on folks. So I'm like, he said, get in the corner and think about your mama and your baby. And I get in the corner and think about my mama and my baby. And he said, if you ever think about leaving me, I'm going to kill you. And I said, I ain't going to never leave you, right? And then I moved back home shortly after. Then the feds came and picked him up, and he was gone for 23 years. And while he was gone, people asked me if I would ever go back. And I said no, because while I was pregnant with my first child, somebody in her and in his family, the dude that I was pregnant about, got killed. And I witnessed that. I was there to see her being so terrified. And at the time, I was like 16 when that happened to her. So I was like 18 now. And I really didn't take it to be that serious, even though that's how she died. And she was younger than him. And this dude was like 10 years older than me. So I was like, if I get away from this dude, I'm never going back. So he was gone for 23 years. And I never looked back. I would talk to him on the phone because at that point, I was still kind of scared of him. But he was gone for 23 years. And then I'm the type of person I'm going to forgive. I ain't got no hard feelings. But I knew he and I would never be in a relationship again. Because I thought he would make good on what he said. I believed him. His face was serious. It was nothing to be planned. And it was a serious moment. And at that time, I was much younger. But the conversation hadn't even led up to that. That was just out of the blue. And I was just like, what the heck? And then as, you grow up and you see if somebody tell you that they thought about it, and I was just like, no, I would never go back. So I end up getting back with Mr. Wrong after this clown goes to jail for 23 years. It's a rap gangster. And he and I get together finally. And he want to act like he want to do right. And he didn't. He never. And then I meet Mr. Right. Okay. His brother knocks on the door. And I'm like, what? And then we meet. And it's like, yes, this is it. He don't know him. There is a God. So we end up falling in love with each other. And it was so real, y'all. The outside world didn't even matter. And I didn't know until my sister knocked on the door and said that they was first cousins, that Mr. Wrong mother and Mr. Right father was sisters and brothers. Now, I had seen his daddy over here because I was over here with Mr. Wrong at the time. And I didn't pay no attention to it until they brought it to my attention. And then he ended up, you couldn't miss it. I was thinking, oh my God, this is really his daddy, same everything, right? But I didn't know. So I'm like, dang. So Mr. Wrong come home, and his mission that's been throughout our life is to dog me out and make me pay for everything that I did to him when we wasn't together. But in the end, he always dogged himself out. He always had to come back and apologize. And, it was pointless, but he would still do it. That was just him. So I was used to it. But I was over it because that last time that he went, I just was like, this is not it anymore. He got this chick, and it was all about revenge. It was all about hurting me. This chick didn't know anything about him, but he used her for his get back to me, and she was loose as a goose, and she said she was loose as a goose out of her own mouth. Plus, we was hearing, but when you see it and you hear it for yourself, this ain't no secondhand stuff. It's straight from the horse's mouth. That created a new creature in you. And I was just like, no, and I had met Mr. Right. So I was like, no, this is it, And Mr. Right got out of jail, and no, Mr. Right went to jail. That's how I ended back up with Mr. Wrong, right? And then he got out, and he ended up getting married to that wicked witch that I seen, and I ended up crying because I was so devastated. And I didn't tell nobody about his wedding devastated me until they tried to act like Mr. Wrong's devastated me, and it didn't. I had to come out and tell that truth. But anyway, Mr. Wrong and I was over here, hung himself, and I was plain tired. I knew I was a treasure, and throughout our history, all he wanted was trash. He was a garbage man. He could have it, right? I met Mr. Right. He was the best thing that happened to me, but I was just too weak for Mr. Wrong when Mr. Right went to jail. But I also was like, screw this, I had 2 men show me. And when stuff be happening to you, you get to reflecting on stuff. So I ended up getting back with Mr. Wrong. I ended up getting pregnant. We ended up having a baby. Our baby was really little. While he was in there, they both ended up back in jail, Mr. Wrong and Mr. Right. And Mr. Right called me, and I was singing a Tupac song, and he finished it. And I was like, oh, my God, he is the one for me. I made the biggest mistake ever, right? So when he got out, they both was out, And I went over Mr. Wright's house about 3 o'clock in the morning because I knew I had made the biggest mistake. Mr. Wrong was out. He was just doing what he had been doing best. And I was thinking, Mr. Wright has shown me, So I went to get him, and I knock on the door. His mom comes to the door, and he come downstairs, and she said, "Who is it?" And I said, "Tracy." And he come downstairs, and he and I are talking, and I'm trying to get him at this time. I want to tell him, "I'm so sorry. You're the best thing that ever happened to me. I love you. We need to be together. Forgive me," right? But he said this wicked witch up there. He married, and I let him walk down the aisle because there was nothing I could do because I had went back with Mr. Wrong, and, I didn't do right. So I was just like, okay, I'm just going to let him do it, even though I know she's not the one because I'm her and she's I. So I let him do it. I didn't interrupt anything. I was devastated, and my heart was broken, and I shed a tear, right? Never told nobody. I never told about the tears to 2023. So I was like, okay. So I get back with Mr. Wrong, and it's just not right. And Mr. Wrong ended up going to jail. Mr. Right is out at this time, and he goes back to his wife, and she ended up showing her true colors. And I was like, yes, I knew it. I got this in the bag. This is meant to be. So I go to Mr. Wrong's sister house, which is Mr. Wright's cousin. We had been hanging out over there, and the chick that he used to be upon his game to try to play me, but he played himself with like he do every time, was over there. And she was like, I ain't worried about no man because I'm going to do me, meaning she was going to screw. When I hear that, her mouth, when I see this chick loose as a goose getting down, like I had heard, but to see it and hear it, it created a new creature. I was thinking, you know what, this sucker is the garbage man. He don't want number trash, and this treasure just can't do it no more. This is it, like Michael Jackson. So we're hanging out at Mr. Wrong's sister house, which is Mr. Wright's cousin house, and he has now called his loose as a goose slut in the bed, in their marital bed with another man. Backfired. I'm like, okay, I knew it. So I'm like, yes. So I go over to the sister house, and he's in there. When I look, I'm like, what the heck is he doing? Because I had been going over there, and I hadn't seen him, right? So he goes over here to tell his cousin about what happened. And she tell him that I'm coming over there. So he like, well, I'm going to wait till she come, right? I don't know this till later on when I talk to him. So I get over there. I walk in there, he in there, and I'm like, what the hell is he doing here? But I ain't seen him since he was married, and I didn't know it had backfired at this point. So when I see him, I'm like, I love him. And he said, can I talk to you? I didn't hesitate. I don't even know if I put my stuff down. We went outside and we started talking. And I was like, well, why didn't you tell me that? I feel like you should have just gave me that choice. And he said, you knew. And after he said, I knew, that top went pop. And before I knew it, I was going, if I would have snapped, I was going to be in the police station in handcuffs with them spraying water in my eyes because they had maced me. Because that's a true story that happened to me. So I got mad and I left. I didn't even get his phone number. I was like, I'm out of here. We did not have this toxic relationship, and I will not turn it into that. I'm pissed off. I'm glad that I was right, and I love you, and I know that you're the one, but I'm out. I didn't get his number. When I cooled down, I went back to get him. The wicked witch had already sent him to jail. So then Mr. Wrong come home, and he stuck back there in a 20-year wilderness. He think he still got it, but they ain't heard nothing about he and I since he been home. Because all I could think about is Mr. Right was right, right? And then June 16, 2016, I was supposed to marry Mr. Wrong. And it was like, me and Mr. Wrong we've been getting married a couple of times in our lives. And to keep it 100, God would never let me do it. Okay, that's why we never got married. But I was like, I had knew that Mr. Right was it, but since my loyalty was met with Mr. Wrong, because I had the same thing happen to me, and that was like my number one rule: don't cross that line. I always tried to make it right with Mr. Wrong, but Mr. Wrong didn't care who he slept with. he would have slept with anybody in my family without second guessing, knowing that we was kin. Right? That was just him. So, I was just like, you know what? Like I said, we was feet away from each other. I was at my goddaughter's mother's house, and I was telling her about Mr. Wright. She was like, why don't you be with him? And at that time, I had to grow up. But I always said that he was the best thing that ever happened to me. I always tell everybody this story. And I had even ended up telling Mr. Wrong at this point, when he came home that last time, after he wanted to continue to just be him and thought that I was just going to still just be taking that stuff, because that was our history, that was our normal. But I had been introduced to Mr. Wright, and I had loved him. He loved me. It was equal, and we were second to none, right? So I'm like, this ain't it. And I told Mr. Wrong, I said, listen, I got to keep it real with you. You know, I love him. He was the best thing that ever happened to me. And the only department that you got him beat in is the look department, because he wrapped rings around your ass, right? He had voice started shaking, wanted to cry. He's still available. And I was thinking, how you know? You know. So we didn't get married, and I really didn't care. That our date was June 16, 2016. Right? And I really can't even tell y'all why I faked that marathon, because I guess I wanted to see if I still had it. But we had been getting married throughout our lives, and we never made it because God wouldn't let me. So God had said no, and I really didn't care. And Mr. Wrong, I had sent Mr. Wrong a picture, and it was me in the mirror from the side saying, I look good, standing by my own side. This is the honest to God truth. Mr. Wright is gone, because that wicked witch just sent him up, right? She done snaked him out. So, I sent Mr. Wrong a picture standing by the side, by my own, from the side. My head was, I look good standing by my own side. He texted me back and said, I was just trying to show off my bum. So I was like, oh no, this ain't it. So he didn't know what two niggas rubbed together meant, so he went on his first faking marathon. He was calling the child out there, had her FaceTime. He laughing like something was funny, because check his past and look at the pattern. That's who he is. He was used to doing this. You know, when I heard him, he eye for eye. He got to dog me out. So I really wasn't there. So he was bragging different. Oops, he bragged different. He snatched this chick up, and he was on this faking marathon, involved the child, had her FaceTime me, and I had got into it with all these wicked demonic forces from my mother's family, and I needed to move. He was playing, the devil was using him. I didn't care about nobody he was with. They hadn't heard anything about he and ISIS. He had touched down. He had been on plenty marathons. He done been back with the loose as a goose baby mama he was using in the game before Pond in his game the first time. He done got with his cousin baby mama, had a baby by her. They don't hear nothing about he and I. Then he snatched up this colorless chick, because he don't know what two nickels rubbed together mean, but I didn't care. He went on that faking marathon, and at this time, I needed to move. So I thought I could threaten him into moving versus taking one of my cousins over there and just cleaning out his whole account, right? I didn't want to do that, because we shared a child, and she still didn't know the truth about him, right? And she still had feelings for him. So I was like, nah, I tried to threaten him, but that didn't work, but I was not there. So he was trying to make people think that I was still the same person. And he and I had each other phone numbers. I rode right past him, and the chick then called and text. And we was talking on the phone. He was saying, I thought I seen you today. I said, you ain't seen me, because I ain't been over there, because this wasn't that. He had some kids by this hot breath, stinking, loose as a goose female that was nothing but trash, but he was a gardener. And she came and stood in my yard and all this stuff. And I really didn't care. I didn't trip off chick, because you came to my sister to tell her about you and him. You're not that. I'm sorry he lied to you, but he did. And in the end, she wasn't nothing but mama got pregnant and papa got a piece of, and she had 2 kids, right? And I really didn't care. It was over. We had 2 kids. I had 2 kids first. So I'm like, this is over, you know. So I end up saying it's over. I see what I see about Mr. Wright. I take my number to his girlfriend's house, to their house and give it to the girlfriend versus the brother. So he never got the message. Hold on.